Everybody, welcome. Knowles 24/7 on the bench. I'm Trey Rowland. I'm here with Brendan Sinone, Zach Blostein. Guys, it's ACC Media Week. We got some recruiting stuff to talk about. I'm jazzed. I get to host a little bit. It's all fun and games, dude. Welcome to the beginning of the week. I'm ready to roll. How about y'all?
Those are like two Transformers references right there. Jazz, best Autobot, R.I.P. Michael Bay. And then roll cast, kind of ready to roll, kind of get it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's actually my last name, and I love Transformers. So those were definitely two intentional references.
There we
Let's
go,
get down
nailed
to
it.
business. Let's talk about our sponsors. The ever present, ever lovely, ever experimental, but artfully crafted Chattanooga whiskey. That's right. Guys, you've tried the rest. Now taste the best. Chattanooga whiskey is not playing around when it comes to their blends. Whether it's their base offerings, their foundational yet still artfully crafted 111 blend, just enough heat to get you through these warm summer months. You got kids yelling at you. They're not in daycare anymore. They want you to blow up the water slide again for like the fifth time this week. Take a little sip of that Chattanooga whiskey, take that edge off, and just slide right into the warm summer months. We love what they got, Brendan. They got a bunch of funky stuff going on right now. It's not just the stuff that you can find anywhere. What are some of their fun blends they have?
Listen, they have a limoncello.
I ordered it.
All right, so this is
Dude,
elusive. Both.
shout out to the listeners, by the way. As soon as it went available on Sealbacks, I got like 5 messages right away. They're like, "Hey, you need to order it right now," because everyone got the notification, including me, that it was available. So yeah, I ordered it. I'm looking forward to trying that when it comes in.
That's
Colin
good.
Toomer was also trying to get it, and he got it. He procured it as well. So yeah, it was a well sought after bottle. They do cool stuff.
Good stuff, guys. They only do the coolest stuff and only the best stuff. Zach will have a nice little review whenever you wrap your lips around that one. So they got limoncellos, they got regular hooch, they got experimental hooch, they got every kind of hooch you could want. And what do I always say when I host this podcast? Probably in a very non-responsible manner, but when you're drinking your Chattanooga whiskey hooch, sell your house, man. What a great time to jump into the market. Sell your house, buy a house, rent a house, buy another house, put a house on top of your house, house out, houseception. Do whatever you want, but if you do it with the Turner Group. They've got you covered. Colin and Amy Turner. I was going to say Becky, but RIP, not there anymore. But Colin
Oh,
and Amy, they got you
not
covered. Okay, good. She's still alive. We love you, Becky. Anyway, Colin and Amy Turner, they are going to hook you up with whatever you need. We've used them personally. We know people that use them personally. They have the reach that you need in a very fraught real estate market. However, the level of care and expertise that you get, oh my goodness, you're going to think you're at a niche little real estate boutique, and you kind of are. They're the best. They're going to treat you the best. Drink your whiskey, sell your house, Chattanooga, Turner Group. If you do anything else, you only have yourself to blame. Brendan, speaking of blame, there's a lot of blame right now, but what's going on with Florida State's kind of cold streak in recruiting? The end of June was nice. Beginning of July is a little fraught. I don't even know who wants to step in here, but we've seen a little bit of expansion going on some of the boards, particularly right now the edge board. So, Zach, Brendan, what's going on with Florida State's recruiting of the edge position? There seems to be a recalibration. Who are the names that fell off, and who are the names that Florida State fans should know right now?
Yeah, so the edge board specifically, obviously Florida State right now does not have a commitment at the position. So
Woof.
hosted several edge prospects, and I know this is a hot topic on the message board, but when we talk about the edge position, we're talking about players that are projected to likely play that jack linebacker spot in Tony White's defense.
Mm-hmm.
And they hosted several prospects on OBs in June who could have played that spot. They were trending for a guy like Chris Addison, who ended up at Michigan State. Cottrell Webb is another guy that they hosted who ended up at Purdue. And then there were a few other names that went elsewhere. So FSU kind of had to hit the reset button in the first few weeks of July after those decisions went elsewhere. The first guy I think they kind of reapproached was Jarius Rogers. He's a lanky pass rusher out of the Jacksonville area, Fleming Island, I believe, and he was is committed to Syracuse, has been a target for Florida State for a long time. He took, I think, like I counted like 7 visits to FSU in the last year or so, but things kind of fell off, and it was more so FSU's doing. They stopped recruiting him as hard during the springtime. I think
Mm-hmm.
new staff kind of made their evals, and he wasn't at the top of the board. He's apparently put on some more weight, which was kind of a concern with his frame, and then I mean, obviously, we talked about they have limited options, right? So I think they're kind of moving to some of the Plan B types. They also made 2 other offers. One to the number one. He's listed as number 2, but I think it's the number 1 player in Sweden.
A
Gustav.
high honor.
I think a
Yeah,
different defensive lineman from Sweden. Didn't they commit to Georgia? I think there's a better one.
Valden Stone. Yeah, he's more of an interior type.
Sweden's just turning them out. It's a
Yeah,
pipeline.
It's a
yeah. There's
factory, dude.
a lot of international prospects. There's I think it's the group PPI. They do a really good job of kind of locating those international players and kind of bringing them to the attention of college coaches in the U.S. So yeah, I
Can
mean,
you say it backwards, Zach?
what
Say PPI backwards.
Brendan,
Gustav Henry?
we're not gonna get into that. Zach,
Yeah,
say the player's name. I'm hosting
Gu,
this. We're not gonna do
Gus,
this kind of amateur hour
yeah.
stuff.
He tries to do this. Thank you for stepping in, Trey. You need to be here more often.
Yeah, don't.
Gustav Henriks Ross. I think
Ooh.
that's how you pronounce it. He's a guy that I got like kind of a tip on that Florida State was going to be involved with, at least to some extent. I reached out to him. He told me that Mike Norvell had hit him up and was like, "Hey, I like your film. I'm going to go break down your film with the rest of my coaching staff this upcoming week." They did that, and then he ends up getting offered. He's a guy that just on initial messages and stuff seems legitimately interested in Florida State. And then they offered another prospect who's committed to another school. I know Brendan has a take on this one. LSU commit DeAnthony Lafayette out of Orlando Lake Nona High School. Not the tallest defensive lineman. I think he's listed just around 6'1", maybe a bit under, but super productive. I mean, he had like 17 sacks this past season as a junior. And I mean, he took OVs to like Oklahoma, Miami, and LSU before he picked LSU at the beginning of this month. So FSU comes in with an offer there. Brendan, I want to hear your take on that recruitment.
I think he's a badass. I think he's really, really good to the point of like, I would advocate for him to be a middle tier. Well, not even a middle tier 90 grade. I was going to say middle tier 4-star, middle tier 90 grade. So like, I have
What
him
about his
92 on him.
game? What about his game makes you say that? Because that's pretty off on where he's at right now. He's coveted by some high level schools, so that's an interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, like in addition to like the LSU commit, like Florida was offer for him pretty early on. He's got a bunch of powerful offers. So the big like takeaway for him, the big like mitigation is that he's shorter, like Zach said. I think that would maybe scare some people off, but like the wingspan, the arm length
Mm-hmm.
has been verified, and it's like legitimately like excellent. It's really good. So that kind of combats the concern of size. So you could maybe still say how big can he actually get? I know for FSU's purposes and their defensive ends and their jack position, or the field DN, they want like James Williams, kind of like that prototype in terms of the build. They want long and filled out too. So he's not ideal for what they want. But to me, like that's the next best tier. If you can't get 6'5" with long arms, like you still have some of the ability. And the arms matter because in these combat skills, like you need to be able to get your hands into someone's chest before they get them into yours. Like that's the
Sure.
name of the game, the trenches, and that's why having long arms matters. He also has big hands. He runs in the 4.7 range, so he's athletic. But when you watch him, like the film pops of like he's got a quick first step. He's super explosive, violent with his hands, and he's got bend too. Which sometimes when you are a little like either on the higher or the taller side or the shorter side, so like 6'1" below or like 6'5" taller, you can kind of be a little stiffer in
Mm-hmm.
some ways. But he's fluid. I just thought the film is super fun. Zach mentioned the productivity, 16 sacks. I just like if it was not for the height, and again that's mitigated some to me with the arm length. Like I think he would be easily a guy people are talking about as like a borderline 5-star, just based on the skill set.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, that height can kind of that shorter height. If you do have the prerequisite arm length, you can actually play with a little bit of leverage. It makes you a tough
Mhm.
matchup for some of those like long,
That's why I
lengthy
think it's like an
tackles.
ideal build in some ways, Trey, is 'cause it can help you with that to an extent too.
Right, and it gives you a unique skill set that maybe a lot of times you're not seeing at that offensive tackle position. So I'm with you there. Where would you rank him if you had to include Lafayette and kind of like those initial like edge guys that Florida State thought they were trending pretty good with in spring? Be higher than the dudes that committed to those mid-level Big Ten schools?
Yeah,
I
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had, like, Chris Addison an 80. I think I landed on an 89 grade for him, ultimately, decent length, good athleticism. Help me out, Zach, who's the kid that just went from Atlanta who went to Purdue with
Cottrell Webb.
Trail Webb? I didn't He was fine. I thought he was like a middle tier 3 star. I don't know how
Okay.
much more production you can get out of him. His production has gotten better year over year, but like for the next level with college, the way the frame's built, yeah, I'm not sure. So like the Cottrell Webb, I was gonna say decommitment, that not working in Florida State's favor, I honestly think is a good thing. I was fine with FSU not allocating resources there financially to him.
Sure.
Now you have to go and you have to land, some of the guys. I like all three of the guys they just recently offered or turned the heat back up on that Zach mentioned more than Webb, just as much as Addison. So like this could be a good thing that we want to evaluate, and Zach would be able to talk about this more informatively as me. But like if you want to talk about the process of it and getting to this point, that I don't love as much. Like D'Anthony or Lafayette was like supposed to be. He was the guy that the staff knew about back early in the spring and just kind of weren't in love with him. And they can value what they want to value, but to go ahead and offer him now after he's committed to LSU just makes it exponentially harder to go ahead and get it. We'll see. They have time to go ahead and get it done, but I don't
Yeah,
love the process.
I actually saw Lafayette the day after he got offered from Florida State at a media day over here in Orlando, and he told me that he's going to give FSU a shot. But it's always tough, right? Like you're kind of fully banking on the season. We know that the recruiting class is going to be largely impacted by the results of the season, but it looks like FSU is trying to get him on campus as soon as possible, and ideally for the first game of the year against Alabama. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to need to kind of put on a strong showing if you're going to land a prospect like that that's committed to LSU now.
How do you feel about the process, Zach? Because Brendan mentioned it, and I'd like some insight too. It feels like Florida State's scrambling, but are they scrambling due to like a deficiency in the recruiting? Are they a lot of these prospects that committed to like the Purdue's and the Michigan States? Were they like financial decisions? Why do you think Florida State is in the position where they're at on this position? Didn't mean to say the position that many times, but there you go.
Yeah, to touch on this position, no, I think with the a lot of these a lot of the guys that so here's the issue. Like I think their edge recruiting board, by the time the summer rolled around, a lot of those top options that they would have been willing to spend on, trying to think of like some of the names, like Xavier Griffin Haynes, Jake Cruel. There's a few other guys that fall in that category who they were high on but couldn't secure OVs from, either
Right.
because they canceled them or whatever other reason. I think then they got like their top options then became those, maybe middle to lower tier guys on their board. And then when you're coming down to it, like a Cottrell Webb or Chris Addison, I think Purdue and Michigan State both valued those guys more than Florida State did financially. Um, to the point where I think that played a role in why they didn't win out in those recruitments. I don't think they were willing to go and match whatever those schools were paying, but that's also Florida State's fault for not having those top options that they were willing to spend on, and having those recruitments they were involved with, right? So I think that's kind of the problem that led to the board kind of falling out at the end of the summer, at the end of June and into July. And
And
it
Zach, just one quick question because this is interesting to me. Is it also troubling to you that a school of Florida State's caliber has to match a Purdue or Michigan State offer to get a kid to commit to Florida State over Michigan State or Purdue? We've been talking about how much like what's the percentage of these decisions that are purely financial? And I think you guys have had the discussion. Relationships still matter. Like,
Yeah.
is it concerning that like I don't know how much less they were. I don't know if you want to get into it, but like, man, the fact that Florida State has to match a Purdue or a Michigan State to get them to come down here, especially for kids that are more located in the South geographically, that's pretty concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I should correct myself. Like, I don't know that the difference in what they were offered,
Sure.
right? It could have been a
Okay.
thing. Hey, come up this much amount of money, and we'll go there in comparison to however much higher it was at another school, right? Like it
Gotcha. Good
could have been like
context.
yeah, like a not an exact match, but like get the number up a little bit, and they weren't willing to budge. So to, but I agree, right? Like if FSU wants one of those players, and I believe all those guys at the end of their recruitments were takes for Florida State. I think now we can kind of contextualize takes within a certain price range, right? Like obviously this kid's a take for however much money that we're willing to allocate to what we value him as. But still, like if FSU wants a guy over a bottom dwelling school in the Big Ten. Like they should be able to land them even at a discount. So yeah, I mean there is some troubling aspects to that, but like Brendan kind of alluded to earlier, like I think like none of those guys were really like true difference makers to me.
Hmm.
And that doesn't excuse having to go and reset your whole board and having to start from zero essentially with a lot of these guys. Um, what should have happened is you should have had some of those high level players that you were truly in on at the position over the summer, and you should have spent to the close of the top of what you could have to. I mean, it's a premium position, right? Like we've talked about that a ton over the years. Like you need to go and land some elite edge rushers out of the high school ranks, and they just haven't done that. And that's the more concerning thing than maybe the not matching whatever or getting closer to the offers of those other kind of lower tier prospects that they missed on. To me,
Yeah, and it's a verifiable trend. Like, when was the last high level pass rusher that they landed? Florida State has shown that in spots they can recruit for, I guess, like non premium positions, like the Usman Chroma like recruitment. That's one that's like that was a huge battle that you won it, but it hasn't carried over for tackle and it hasn't really carried over for edge no matter what Florida State's record was the year before. So I
Is
don't
it
know. Like, can they just not do it? I don't, you know what I
Edge is
mean?
so perplexing to me because you have representatives representing you extremely well in the NFL.
Like
Tremaine
maybe the
Johnson,
best, yeah.
Kiera Thomas, even like and those are all guys who were transfers and came in and did it, but still like they got highlighted by the previous defensive staff. They got developed, and like Jared Verse did get bigger and stronger and faster in this program. Even Pat Payton, and like there was a major fall off year, and I think that was culturally like he was more fell in with the crumbling culture, but like he got better year over
yeah,
year
Josh
into
Farmer, Daryl Jackson, like
and those are defense attack, but still
yeah,
like to Josh. Ooh, oh, hey, did you guys check out the roll cast? To Zach's point,
Ah.
there's legitimately like growth, and the fact that especially at defensive end, like it hasn't materialized, and then being able. AB wrote this about Jordan Travis is that his progression should have helped you more with quarterback recruiting than it did, and I feel similarly for defensive end as well.
And they're proud. I mean, this is such a stupid soft factor, but those guys are proudly like Florida State guys. They're not saying like their high school name on Monday Night Football. Like they are
Yeah.
Norvell bros. Like to like whatever that one kid that got the tat of Norvell after they beat UNC in 2020. Like these are like tatted up Norvell guys. Braden Fisk, Jared Verse is one of the best players in the entire league. If you can't sell that, or at least have that as a component to where I don't know if it's a problem with the selling aspect or a problem of understanding your place in the realm of college football. They understood it with Usman Chroma. It's like, dude, to beat Georgia, we are going to have to show this kid how important he is, offer a ton, and close it, and probably and if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know, overpay compared to some of the competition. I don't know why they don't have that realization with like edge and tackle, and just get the thought of like we're going to have to drastically overpay for a quality kid out of the way. So I don't know if it's if they have like numbers that they're set for roster building, if they don't recognize what sort of position they are for like premium tackles and edges. What do you guys think it is? Like to me, it's like just get it out of the way and offer to overpay from Jump Street.
Do you want to
Yeah, I
go,
mean,
Zach? Okay.
yeah. I agree with you, Trey. And like you kind of look at some of the examples around the sport in I wouldn't say the same tier, but similar tier as Florida State, right? Like I think a lot of people that come to the defense of FSU and not spending at these premium positions is like, oh well, they can't afford to. Well, you look at some other schools like a Tennessee, for example. I think Tennessee is a top spender, but I like how they've allocated resources. They spent a ton of money to land David Sanders, the 5-star tackle, this past cycle, and he's probably going to start for them in year one.
Mm-hmm.
Missouri did it. I think Missouri is, a fair comparison. Florida State financially, at least. I think FSU's, at the very least on that level or higher. They went and landed a 5-star offensive tackle, I believe, last year in Lamont Rogers. There's a number of other schools in comparison to FSU's kind of spending level that are allocating those high level of resources to those premium positions because they understand the importance of it, right, towards roster building. You cannot find those. I mean, we talked about this at length. You cannot find those players readily available in the portal every cycle. So like those are the players you if you find one and they start developing into a high level player, like you're doing whatever it takes to retain them on your roster. That's why they just never tend to end up leaving those programs. So yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly why Florida State hasn't done that to this point. It's like a great example of this. I was doing an article kind of going over the OV like hit rate for Florida State over the past 4 or 5 years, and I looked at last summer, and I kind of forgot about this just because of how the class kind of just came apart during the season. But that last weekend of June, they hosted 3 5-star offensive tackles, and one was committed to them in Solomon Thomas, but there's an argument that he could be classified as a guard. I think that's at the time he was a tackle.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, the two other, I think Josh Petty was one, and I want to say it was Lamont Rogers was the other. And they Georgia Tech is another example of a school that's a lesser spender than FSU that went and spent on a 5-star offensive tackle. And FSU, was
FSU ended up probably having to pay a similar level for Josh Petty as they would if they had paid it then. Then they ended up the kid from Mississippi. They probably ended up spending a similar amount because
Mario Nash.
they had to overspend for guys
Yeah, to retain
in a
them in the
sense given the season. So
And
just
that's a great point, Brendan. It's just you're the last thing you want if you gotta pay or if you want to say overpay, go ahead. But if you're paying the prerequisite market level for what your results have been and your recruiting relationships for a game changer, whatever, dude, it's a game changer. But man, if you gotta pay above market level for good roster pieces, but that are just kind of you're not talking wins above replacement anymore. That seems to be kind of the worst of both worlds. So
I do think that happened. I think that was probably happened quite a bit in this past cycle, just because of the circumstances of.
right, which you got to land guys. It's just like I said once again, and it's something I guess for us to kind of follow up on. I think maybe the how edge shakes out, how offensive tackle shakes out. I would just want to know like, is there an understanding of our place in the world right now? And is that being shown in the initial offers, or is there a sense of pride, or is there a sense of thinking you can recruit around it? Is there a sense of financial adherence to what I think this position is worth? That I don't know, but man, I don't know. It's just an interesting development that seems to have kind of played itself over the past couple years, 100% with this position on the board.
I do have a theory as to kind of why this has happened to this specific position. Real quick, I want to be fair and try to provide some balance here.
Yep.
So the past recruiting at defensive end up until this cycle was under Coach John Papuchis, who's now the linebackers coach. And we know his background was he would go home run hitting, and often did hit the home runs at the prep level. Uh, Transfer portal, a different matter.
Yep.
Uh, this year's cycle is Terrence Knighton, who does the defensive line. He will get guys who project as like the pass rushing jacks, but Jack can also be a linebacker. But when we're talking about the defensive ends, the edge defenders, that falls under Terrence Knighton. He also does the interior defensive line as well, and that part of the class has been markedly better with a variety of players. So just I want to provide that like we spend a lot of time being critical in the analytical sense of defensive end reporting here or recruiting here, but also I think defensive tackle recruiting has been solid. I think what we've seen with defensive end particularly is just the circular pattern of you haven't recruited at the prep ranks and developed it at a high enough level consistently. So you've had to turn to the transfer portal. And when you've gone to the transfer portal, you generally hit, but you had to keep going to because you have just not gotten defensive ends who've really developed into dudes other than Pat Payton for a year and a half of that, and then obviously not. You've had to go back into the portal again. And so when you go back into the portal, you're always inherently spending more to acquire than you would just to retain. And so, like a Jason Jenkins, who we've reported is coming along very well in his rehab, he's high in the plans for Florida State this year. They're super excited about him. He was probably your most expensive acquisition this offseason, maybe as much, if not more, than Tommy Castellanos. And it's a premium
That's
position.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a premium position. It's a guy who they think very highly of, who think can play multiple spots, has some like there's reasons why they decided to make that decision. But when you're putting that amount of money into the roster for like it's hard to then justify it for the next year to say we're going to spend and be the market setters at defensive end again. So until you like break through and feel like you can get a market value defensive end at an elite level and like okay, you spend a high level at a guy uh, who you think you can develop quickly, get on the field, be worth the ROI, you're just kind of in this self fulfilling prophecy. I feel like with defensive end recruiting, and you have to break through and find someone who can contribute early, who represents value, and then you can start stacking resources into that position group versus having to go heavy in the transfer portal. I mean, how many edge defenders did they add in the transfer portal to some extent or another? This three,
Yeah, at
four.
least you do Diggs, McCray, Jenkins. It really, I'm with you, man. It's really a chicken or the edge situation. Like you have to break through with a high school recruit to show people you can break through with high school recruits to combat the negative recruiting. But you haven't broken through with the high school recruits, so you got to have somebody rush the passer. So it's tough, but you make $10 million a year, so figure it out. So I'm with you. I think it's something to look at. I think we'll see how the class shakes out. We know from last year we're still in July. There's plenty. There's a lot of time and a lot of ways things can go. Got to judge people on the final product. Good data point. Good data point in a pretty decently long historical trend. Unfortunately, not to just keep on packing on the optimistic news, running back, a little rough for Florida State this cycle as well. Long time commit Amari Thomas, a local kid, he decommits. I don't think he's made his final decision yet, but I mean that feels like a foregone conclusion to South Carolina, right, Zach? What happened here?
Yeah, so I mean, he committed to Florida State back in February of this year. He took like back-to-back junior day visits and then made an early commitment. But it was clear from pretty early on that he wasn't going to shut down his process. Um, he, I mean, this kind of came to a head in the summer. He showed up to FSU's 7-on-7 camp, like on their campus, with South Carolina gloves on,
Ugh, how
which was a
dare
bad,
you?
yeah,
How
which was a bad
dare you?
sign coming off an OV at South Carolina, and it was just clear from that point on that there was worry inside the building about him, eventually flipping or decommitting. That obviously happens this past week. Yeah, I think he's making his final decision on the 9th of August. I believe he'll probably end up at South Carolina. I know a few schools have reached out. Um, but yeah, I mean it's a tough loss. I think all of us are pretty high on Amari Thomas's talent. I know Brennan saw him at that 7-on-7 camp and thought highly of him. And he's a guy that I mean he plays his high school football like an hour west of Tallahassee in Bluntstown. Like those are the guys you need to keep home, right? Like you can't let South Carolina go in and steal a talent away from you. That's a pretty local player and one of his caliber. Like I think and he's the other thing is he's the only running back commit they have in the class. All of their other running backs they hosted for OBs have committed elsewhere. So once again, it looks like they're going to have to probably reset the board. I've heard that they're evaling a number of prospects, or they have been this past week. You could see some offers go out at that position here soon. It's just an unfortunate development because I really like Amari Thomas as a player, and that local aspect. It's been a thing that's kind of haunted Florida State, right? Like a lot of guys have come out
Yeah.
of Tallahassee or the Panhandle in general, and I think once you go farther in the Panhandle, it's a little bit more fair to expect some of those other regional schools like in Auburn, LSU, Alabama to kind of get in the mix for those players, but a guy that's just an hour down the road, like that's a guy you need to keep home, and it's a tough development.
Yeah, and not fun, especially after you did win a high profile running back recruit the year before. What do you think was the main decision? Was it just and the kid, at least from the articles that you guys wrote, it sounds like he gave the coaching staff like ample notice. Seems like a
Yeah.
really good, like honorable kid, did it the right way. But I mean, what do you think was the final factor? Was it just you won 2 and South Carolina won 9 or whatever they won? Like what was the final factor in his decision to finally sever ties?
It sounded like, based on his interview that he did over the summer, coming off his OV to Florida State at the end of June, that was the biggest factor. He viewed South Carolina as a real contender. Obviously, Florida State coming off the season they did, I don't think he viewed them in the same light. But this is a guy that also committed to. It's not like he was a commit to FSU before 2-10, right? He committed afterwards. But I mean, South Carolina's coaching staff is a really good recruiting staff. Like that's Shane Beamer does a good job over there. So I'm sure they recruited the heck out of him. And I think Florida State, especially with the landing Usman Chroma, the allocation of resources there, it makes sense that they might not be able to go ahead and land a top back in this year's class. And Amari Thomas, we have him graded or rated as a high 3-star prospect. I think he's probably a blue chip player, but regardless, like that's a guy that you'd think would be in their wheelhouse to land this year. Coming off of a win like Chroma, right? Like not a guy
Yeah.
that's like a Derek Cooper, Jay Lamar, Carson Baker type, a top 200 player or whatever. He's local. You'd expect some kind of, I wouldn't say discount, but just the factor of him being basically in town should play a role there. So yeah, I mean, I think the main thing was the the where those two programs are at in comparison to each other, but that's on FSU to combat that. So yeah,
And it's unfortunately, like you said, he committed in February. He didn't commit last August. Like it was a message that you did combat and successfully win, and then somebody pointed to something that he already knew, and it was enough for a kid that you said is less than an hour away. I guess Brendan, you've done a lot of work this offseason on like tiers and how Florida State's recruiting, and there's been a lot of conversation like where could Florida State finish? Could this be the first top 10 after a abysmal crap season? Are we where we always are? Let me just do a vibe check with you, man. You've done a lot of a lot of historical research, a lot of data you've put together. How now that the summer recruiting kind of phase is pretty much done, how are you feeling about Florida State's prep recruiting operation? And like you said, it's a 3-phase deal. You got before the season, you got during the season, and you got the close. Phase one's over. Grade phase one for Florida State.
C plus. Maybe I can grade. You can convince me to grade on a curve with what they were recruiting with for this past. What happened last season. You can maybe
Mm-hmm.
go to B minus range. You're currently sitting 15th. You have 21 commits, so you're taking a bigger class than usual. I think you're going to continue to recruit some of the guys that you missed on, like Hezzy Kent, and do you keep recruiting Amari Thomas? Obviously, edge still has to be like the guys you entered with are close to blue chip prospects. So there's room for it to expand, but there is a ceiling on this class. It almost assuredly cannot be a top 10 class. And even during that June stretch that a lot of people were celebrating and chest pumping with, I was like, pump the brakes. It was kind of considered Debbie Downer, but that's just this is what was coming. It's like your options were getting limited. You could look and see you only have X amount of guys left on the board. It was tough for me to get super psyched, but I will say like they've proven to have a level of core competency. I think with this cycle for the most part, uh, I like a lot of what they've done. I think it's a pretty like high floor class that does stand out to me, but it's also devoid of legit stars. I think only a couple guys. I don't know if I have anyone in the class other than Chauncey Kennedy ranked over like a 93 um, for my purposes of how I would view them and more privy now than before, than in the past few months, even to how the grading system works and how to evaluate and getting more information and stuff. So, like, it's a shoulder shrug for me, Trey. And I will say
Yeah.
I do like that they beat out Auburn for a handful of guys. I think that's like when we looked at some of the tier stuff. That was a school you had to go ahead and
Yep.
start winning more against. So that was good. I don't know what's happening with Auburn. That is bizarre. Um, Florida, you lost to Hezi. You lost Hezi Kent to them in the head-to-head. Disappointing, a guy you wanted, mitigated some because you have another tight end commit who you really like. The South Carolina loss here with Amari Thomas, that stings. Just one caveat too, real quick with Amari Thomas. One thing I would throw out there is either they spent more than you and valued him more and were in a position to pay more to a running back than you were. Could be a variety of reasons why.
Yep.
But I think it does point to some of the larger like existential like crises that we have with Florida State is like, are you or have you allocated, have you built and planned for what's happening in college football at this very day? Now you could be projecting what will happen with different court rulings and stuff down the road. But right now, are you positioning yourself in the best chance to put together the best recruiting classes that you possibly can? I would say no. So that is a concern I have. Or it wasn't about the money; it was just a better relationship that Zach was alluding to, and a kid went far away from you. Bottom line is a kid you really liked, you wanted, you thought you had kind of snuck under the radar, and you didn't get them. And so, like, those are kind of the things that I would like to see less of.
Quick point of clarification before I get kind of Zach's vibes after this phase one. You say Florida State isn't really positioning itself well for this new phase, and once we don't know 100% know what that's going to look like. Why do you have that initial reaction? Is it based off public comments? Is it based off insider sources? Is it based on the nature of some of the deals that they're presenting? Why do you feel Florida State's not really set up for this next phase for success? Because I don't think you're alone in that sentiment. I think that's a very real concern that a lot of people are feeling.
Yeah, it's I mean a little bit of A, B, and C that you laid out there of what it could be. I mean they've made public comments on it. Like obviously I'm talking to people around the program, other programs as well, to get a sense of how different schools are handling the new salary cap era. There's now public comments. Kirby Smart was talking about, or sorry, not Kirby Smart. Jim Sankey, Greg Sankey.
Greg
Jesus,
Sankey.
getting
That's
old, man,
okay.
mid-30s.
That was
It's
good, dude. It was a quick pull. Don't be so hard on yourself. That was
thank you.
fine.
Appreciate it. But like, so he was talking about it now being a softer cap. This is all going to go through court. We're going to see what Congress does with House and whether they do put like a anti monopoly. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not
Antitrust.
antitrust, which is basically you can't have. There's going to be all sorts of stuff. Probably going to be having. You're already starting to see some of the collectives push back. And so what Florida State's doing right now is they are abiding by the salary cap. For the most part, I think like painting far within the lines more than others are in their recruiting footprint. And that's their strategy. And I think it's based on the idea that eventually there will be this law and order to what's happening. There will be a strict salary cap, and eventually get back to the bagman and in times of flat circle and blah, blah, blah. But I think that there's also teams that are operating far without it right now. And it's a calculated gamble for both sides. Like if you're Florida State and you're offering real contracts to players, and they can't offer them, by the way, until August 1st to recruits. So that is just something
Okay.
out there is that you don't know exactly what it looks like. You don't know if it's monopoly money or whatever. But that's when that can go out. And so you don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So it's a calculated gamble, but it is for everyone to an extent. I just, Trey, I aim on the side of just generally, I boil it down to you can't rich people don't like it when you tell them how they can spend their money. And I think the idea that boosters and NIL, collectives that have all this money and guys who just want to go ahead and pay for players because they want to see their team do well are going to do fine with someone slapping you on the wrist and saying, no, you can't you can't spend that. That historically doesn't go well in our country. It's just money talks. And if Congress gets involved as antitrust exemption, then Michael Alford and Florida State's administration will look really smart for giving real money contracts, following within the lines, and not having to deal with any of the fallout that comes with that. And final point to it, real quick, I also don't know if Florida State has put its resources. We know what they've done with bricks and mortar, and they value that as the long term play. I I don't know if, like, I think part of the reason why they want the salary cap to be installed in the way it has been, and to be enforced, is because that's where their financial, like, that's the waters they're swimming in. If it's more than that, they haven't planned for that, and so that's a long way of me answering your question.
That last part, I think, is the one that really is resonating with me. It's like, if you haven't planned for it, can you adjust, or have you not planned for it because you don't have the resources to adjust if it's not within that number? And that, I think, is going to be the story of the next era of football for Florida State. Historically, it seems like they've always been very organizationally conservative. Like, they do the punishments.
When the
NCAA
NCAA
does
comes knocking,
them. Like,
yeah, yes,
we actually, for some reason, listen to that.
and that's
Um,
been through different regimes and different, like, that's
it's
just
consistent. It's
it seems
consistent.
cultural. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. Yeah.
So we'll see. But that, once again, can you pivot if it's different than the conservative estimate that you're banking on, or are you just kind of screwed if it's not what you're banking on? Once again, long-term story. We'll be here at Knowles 24/7 covering it for you. Zach, vibe check for you. Thank you for the context, Brendan. That was very helpful. Zach, vibe check for you. Grade, phase one.
I think C plus, not to copy Brendan, but C plus is a perfect grade. I would have gone B minus if Amari Thomas was still in the boat, just because I do like
Oh
him.
wow,
And
he's worth a full tier
I
of.
mean,
Wow.
you have no running back commits, no edge commits, and no offensive tackle commits, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair grade. They've done well at certain spots like receiver, the defensive line, DB, and
Yep.
and I like some of the variety of player there. But yeah, I mean, you're still missing some of those key positions, and I think with a good season, you have room to improve on that. But yeah, I mean, the options right now are limited because almost all of I think their last remaining player who took an OV to Florida State hasn't made a decision is deciding this upcoming weekend, and Deron Parks, the offensive tackle.
Yeah, you kind of lost your final four guy in the first or second round. Your remaining points left aren't, they're not great. So you're going to do it the best you can, try to get back in some stuff that you're not. But yeah, I'm with you guys. That kind of B minus tier. Um, yeah, and even with the positions where they have had some wins like linebacker, it's still, if high school is going to be your main vein of like infusing top end talent, which is kind of what we've seen over the past couple of years, it needs to be, because that transfer portal is more competitive and there's less top end talent and your message is resonating less. So we all kind of recognize that the game changers, the ceiling raisers, have to be high school talent. I mean, this isn't a class outside of a couple guys that's doing that. So I feel get C plus, B minus. I'm good with it. Brendan, you're traveling, my man. ACC Media Days, normally an extremely tepid, lukewarm, boring affair. Been a little bit spicier over the past couple years. Was kind of preparing for more of the same. Jim Phillips was going to say something dumb. We were going to get some coach speak. I mean, Zach and I had a roll cast with Josh, man. We got ourselves a little bit of a loose cannon with the with the Munch Man, Tommy Castellanos. We
Jordan
got a little
Travis's evil twin.
the evil, yeah, dude, Bizarro Jordan Travis. I can't wait. I think, if I had to guess, my guess is that I think his like shocking quota, I think he met it for the offseason. I think it's actually going to be kind of chill for
I,
ACC Media
He's got
Days,
a skill cap to it.
but I don't know that for certain. What do you guys expect? Zach, you were going to say something before we let
I
Brendan
would I
go?
would I would say I would agree. I mean, if you go, after that rollcast, I went and looked at some of his like Boston College clips after some of their wins and losses, and he's pretty like tame in interview settings for the most part. I don't know what pesky Pete Nakos did to make him say all that, but yeah, I mean I would love for him to honestly, I'm
Same.
here for him to double down, for him to go on a tour at ACC Media Day and just tear into Alabama.
Stand up at the podium and be like, "Where's Nick Saban? Huh?
Yeah,
This
Where is
this
he?"
it was awesome. Like this dude was just a normal like coach speak machine until I got introduced to Leon County women, and he just turned into like a quote demon. So I'm with you, Zach. I want it like if we're gonna go down, I want to go like a blaze, bro. I want it to be just a glorious mess. So I'm hoping he stands on business.
do
It
you
seems like
think that it's a coincidence that there's rumors about Saban coming back to coaching after Tommy's comments?
Oh, he saw him. He heard it.
dude, I don't even know. Like, I don't know. I don't know. That was funny because all the sites were like, "Oh, he's coming back to coaching," and then my uncle on Facebook is showing me like, "Is Saban coming to Florida State?" I was like, "Don't read those. Like, no, just stop."
I have to
So that's
like
an
tell
interesting
yeah.
connection. I've tried to shoot it out of my mind, but maybe Zach is seeing through all. He's seeing between the lines
He can
right
bring in
now.
Jimbo as the offensive coordinator. Will Muschamp's out there defense. It could be the all 2012 coaching staff. I
Be
mean,
sick, dude. This
like
the
on a
all the
defense.
all scowl team who would be very surly, the surliest coaching staff. Brendan, what about you, man? What do you expect? You expect fireworks? You expect some like shrimp cocktail and some boring quotes? What are you
I
expecting?
would. I wonder what's the over under Bayer Sonone sponsored by
The
The Turner
Turner Group.
Group.
over under 4.5 times SID has to tell Tommy like, hey man, before he starts, has to give him just a hey, remember tone it. You're at a 10. We need you like at a 5. Just tone it down.
I'm gonna Sonone with the caveat that there's probably 4.5 times where he should do that, but he won't because if if some of these quotes were allowed to go, we're letting our guys have some free range. So I bet there's going to be 4.5 times where maybe you could do the simmer down thing, but it's not going to happen. So I'm going to Sonone.
What about you, Zach?
I'm buying.
Yeah, I would pay money to hear the coach up that they're getting from Sports Info on like on Tommy specifically. So I have two things that I'm interested in. One is all right. So I am kind of curious to see how Tommy handles himself, given he is very conscious of like what. Yeah, he was talking. Zach wrote a story about it. Like he was talking about it to some guys that was at a quarterback camp or something about like why
Yeah, it
he
was like
said
a
what he's
workout. Cam Ward was
um
there, and yeah,
so yeah, he's aware of how it was perceived and that it took off. So I'm curious to see if it's toned down or not. My theory, I know that Aaron had the like bizarre world Jordan Travis. To me, he's like the opposite of going with the exact he's the exact opposite of your ex. Like DJ Uiagalelei was stoic, was quiet. Even their playing style is just drastically different.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He is
so
you
you're thinking
dated
he's
you
DJ
dated the
U's evil twin?
no, I don't think it, so. I
It,
think no,
it's
I
kind of
think
it's kind of like wait a minute. If you're thinking of twins, think about Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito type twins.
yeah, that's more.
That's the type. Yeah, that
I
he's
think
anti Jordan
you dated
Travis, but Danny
nice.
DeVito Uyangale.
You dated nice Martha for 2.5 years. Through high school, you got into college, and then you got turned loose in Leon County. I think that's the
Martha. Never met a woman named Martha in
Martha.
real
That
life
was
my entire life.
That's my
funny.
girlfriend's mom's name.
Oh, so,
Is it really?
Yeah.
what's it? What up, Martha? Hope you're listening. Lovely name.
No offense, Martha. I'm sure Marthas are fun too, but you just got to wit with the fun. So that's kind of what I'm interested in, is whether he lives up to it, if he kind of plays that role. I think that's gonna be fun. This is also the first time Mike Norvell's going to talk since those comments, and not the comments of what I got that Tommy talking about Alabama's what drew the most headlines. Him talking about saving coaches' jobs and stuff like that. Like, I'm curious to see how Mike fields those questions. I know he'll have his talking points. I don't think he'll get tripped up over it, but I am curious. It's the first opportunity for him to did you like that? Did you want to tell him to scale it back? Like, is that part of his person? Like, what does Mike think? And ultimately, I hope Mike's like, yeah, man, that's who he is. Go, like, just be yourself. Like, to your point, Trey. If it burns down, may it be a glorious blaze, like, right? And if it sets on fire
Viking
and goes to
funeral,
the
a
moon,
pyre.
let it go to the moon. Like, just whatever it is, like, let's ride. And that's kind of, I'm hoping that's the vibe of this team. Yes. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. They also bring Richie Leonard, Earl Little Jr., and then Daryl Jackson. I was kind of surprised with, I thought Deuce would have been a really good player to bring. Deuce Robinson. I thought Jeremiah Wilson. If you wanted to bring in a bunch of transfers, like, listen, at this point, you rely heavily on transfers is what you do. It's fine. Bringing in a bunch of, I mean, last year they brought in a bunch of homegrown talent, and it doesn't. The results are going to be what matters. I wouldn't worry much about the optics of who else they brought. But,
So
yeah.
we want entertainment.
We want
Do you expect it, or do you think it's going to be pretty tame? Prediction.
I expect it to be tame, but I expect it to be tame. The last time, like, Jim Phillips got kind of snarky last year. I thought that was cool.
Ugh, that guy.
He said something stupid about neighborhoods a few years ago. Whatever. The last time, like, Florida State stuff was meaty, that had substance to it, was probably like the Jameis Winston 2014 up in where the golf place was, and that was kind of ridiculous. That was a circus. That's just kind of what it was at that point. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have anything further to add. Brendan, how can they see you guys are going to be there? You're going to be like stories,
Yeah, Chris
everything.
is already up there, or is leaving soon. He'll be up there for Jim Phillips. He loves. Find someone who loves you like Chris, and he loves covering a media day. Like, too, it's like he's like, make sure you get your all ACC ballots in. I'm like, oh, all right. But that's what. So he's in his element. He's entering that phase of the off season as he's gearing up. So he'll be out there. They may actually answer one of Chris's questions to Jim Phillips this year. Last year he was holding up his arm for a long time. I was a bad friend. I should have supported him, literally. And then I'll be there as well for FSU's day. And you can check us all out at Knowles 24/7. Chris and I might even do a quick pod. We'll see. Maybe I'll take him out drinking on Tuesday night if he is willing to indulge. I know I owe him a few beers and get everyone his thoughts on just the world. So
they fear the thoughts of the big dog. Hey, just for the people that are listening to the pod, what's going to be your most surprising All ACC team member vote? Give like your come on, dude. Second team safety, go.
Can I just say I was wrong on plenty last year. I got a lot of pushback for having Cam Ward as the ACC MVP last season.
Okay, this doesn't need to be a gloat sesh for that. I wanted some scoop, and we got to just like, here you go, puffing yourself up. Look at the little peacock chest. Puff that little peacock chest. Anyway, Zach, we go to the more humble member of our team. Zach, anything you'd like to add before we close this one down? And we might talk to you later this week. Who knows? We're a rogue unit here at 24/7.
Brennan, what's the most pressing question you want to ask Tommy?
I don't know. I haven't thought, guys. I don't. You're putting me on the spot.
You're not prepared for this at all?
No,
Chris is going to have an aneurysm listening to this.
I have the whole airplane right up. I want to know. I don't know. I mean, I told you, like, I'm interested in him being the anti-DJ Uiagalelei. Like,
you're going to ask him, how different are you from?
How different are you from the last? How different are you from the last guy? Yeah, I want to get like a vibe check on what he thinks about the team, like talking about confidence, why he thinks the need to instill confidence is important. If this is an unconfident, I want to get I want to see if he's the alpha dog that he seems to want to be. Like, I want to see if that's kind of he owns this moment and continues to like live that life with that bravado. So yeah, I don't know if a pressing question exists, but I want to get the vibe check there.
Love it. And speaking of alpha dogs, our listeners and Knowles247.com subscribers, guys, the content is flowing freely like the Chattanooga whiskey that you love so much. We've got exclusive podcasts, exclusive Beyond the Benches. We've got articles. Adam and Kev are cranking them out. Zach's got the scoop. Brendan's got the analysis. I don't know. I do stuff. But listen, if you want to see all that stuff, got to be a Knowles247.com subscriber right before the season. We love you. I have nothing else to add. Great episode. We've said it all. Keep chopping.